Thanks for listening to KATH 910 AM, Frisco, Dallas, Fort Worth on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Catholic radio for your soul in North Texas. Heard also on grnonline.com and on your smartphone.
Welcome to The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Join us as we journey together on this pilgrimage of faith. And now your host, Sarah Soto.
Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm your Monday, Thursday host of The Quest, Sarah Soto. It is such a great joy to be here with you all. I know you're wondering, because you hang on every time at the beginning of the show to find out. Winter, fall, nothing has come close to Texas. It's still quite warm here. It's shorts weather. It's still very much shorts weather. I know it's the highlight you look forward to every Monday and Thursday, but it is warm, warm, warm. But let's move on to much more important and exciting things. I am so honored and so excited to have one of my favorite guests come back on the show, the owner of my favorite Instagram account. I know there's so many great Instagram accounts out there with so much to offer, but I have Michelle Lentz back on the show. Welcome back, Michelle.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm so excited to have you back. Michelle is the owner of Hey Beginner Wife. You can find her on Instagram at Hey Beginner Wife, and I've asked her to come back on the show. We don't always have return guests, you know, so it's not because of any particular reason, but every now and then a guest just really like penetrates your heart, and it gets you really thinking, and you get this great feedback on it, and you know, you see people downloading the episode, listening, and you're thinking, gosh, like we really got to get the word out about this, you know, this person's apostolate or what they're doing and their contribution to the church. And Michelle's Instagram, Hey Beginner Wife, which I came across, gosh, it's been a while now, but it's been really eye-opening for me and wonderful for my own marriage. I am very much a beginner wife. We just celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary, but Michelle just published her absolutely fabulous book, which is called Hey Beginner Wife, and you can find that book on Amazon. I know all of you are searching for Christmas presents already, and I cannot recommend. We're going to dig all into it today, but if you got a pen or pencil, or you've got your Amazon account pulled up, you've got to look up Hey Beginner Wife on there. This book is absolutely fantastic, and I know that I have the tendency, especially those of you who are longtime listeners, to be a little over the top and dramatic. But the world needs this book. I really do believe that the Lord inspired Michelle to write this book, Hey Beginner Wife, for so many reasons. But we are in desperate need of her really, really good and heartfelt, honest advice about married life. And so right off the bat, Michelle, I'll ask you, who is a beginner wife? Who is a beginner wife? You know, if you've only been married for 5 years or under, or could someone who's been married for 50 years or, 20 years benefit from reading this book?
I've heard that, yes, that's true. No matter how long you've been married, there's going to be things that stick out to you, because a beginner wife is someone who's learning. And we give so much grace to people when they're learning. If you think of a little child who's learning to ride a bike, they fall over and we immediately encourage them. And I think once we hit marriage, we all think we're supposed to know what we're doing. And I want people to know, give yourself some grace and realize that you're a beginner. But even 10 years in, there's things that you haven't encountered yet that you're learning how to do. So if you're a wife who's always learning and wants to continue to learn, you're going to get something out of this book. I'm sure, there's a lot of us married 10, 20 years who wouldn't call ourselves a beginner, but we'd call ourselves an active learner. So that might be a more clear way to put it, that a beginner wife is an active learning wife.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, you've always got to be, learning, and I mean, once you think you have figured it all out, I think is when the problems can really begin. And once
yes.
once you say, you know what, I know it all, I don't need to learn anything else, I think that's a bad sign. But I think that, honestly, if I could give any of our listeners a recommendation, if you know someone who's about to be married, who just got married or has been married and has that open heart to learn more and to dive more deeply into what it means to be a good and loving wife, I really can't recommend this book highly enough. It's got a great price point. It's written beautifully, and you can just tell Michelle put so much heart and soul into it. And I'll let her, because she's so gracious and sharing her time with us. Michelle, can you give us a little bit of your background, as a wife and mother, and sort of how your Instagram account, Hey Beginner Wife, came to be?
Sure. Well, I was one of those girls who wanted to be a wife and a mother as a little girl. That was my life goal, was to grow up and do that. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get married at the age of 24. So I did get to start off my journey rather early, and we did have children right away. So I was able to dive right into what I had always dreamt about. And I was I observed a lot growing up. Even in high school, I was very mindful of couples and marriages. And my mom listened to Focus on the Family, and I would listen right along with her. And I just wanted to know more. So I came to marriage thinking I really knew what I was doing. And in that, felt that I knew better than my husband what I was doing. And so I ended up taking the lead in ways I didn't even realize I was taking the lead. I thought I was contributing something very valuable to our relationship, but with all that I read lots of books. I continued to listen to people on the radio and learn more about marriage. And so we have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. They were all born in 8.5 years, so they're all very close together. And I stayed home with them. I mean, with that many children, there's almost not an option, but that was my goal, that I would stay home with the kids. And that was challenging for us. One, that we had so many children so quickly and close together in terms of my energy and my ability to give to each one of them. But we were also a single income family living in Southern California. No matter where you live, that's going to be challenging. But Southern California has that crazy price point, and we were living on a dime. So there's a lot of stories in my book about what that felt like, what challenge that was for our marriage. And one thing I really do try to do in the book is share lots of stories. I think it's a treat and a blessing to be brought inside of a marriage to see how it really works. And that's what I wanted to give people. I didn't want to just have that rosy picture of this is what it looks like from the outside. I wanted to bring people in and say, this happened and I felt like this, and this is what I learned from it, and this is a mistake I made. So that is a reason that I wrote the book. I started the Instagram because my grown children, actually 3 of them ended up back in Southern California and at the same church, which was really a surprise. And people that got to know them, one, were taken by the fact that these were just great adults that they really enjoyed. And then they discovered that their parents had been married and never divorced, and they wanted to know what their secret was. And my kids came back and said, Mom, you need to write something, because we have lots of people who want to hear how you and Dad did it. And marriage being one of my favorite subjects, I thought, well, if there's people who will listen and actually read what I'm going to write, I'll try it. So Instagram was the forum that they recommended, and I got started doing that. And then from there, people asked if I would write a book, and I thought, well, if you'll read it, I'll write it. So.
Well, and how long have you and your husband been married?
38 years.
It's a long time. And it shouldn't come as a shock to your children's friends at their church that, you'd never been divorced. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, we just don't come across a whole lot of, faithfully married parents who have been married only to each other all throughout their lives and have happy and well-formed children. And so it is something to, I don't want to say it's an anomaly, but it's like, what's going on here? What is the secret? And I certainly feel that way. I think I shared last time you were on that my parents are divorced. And so any sort of, I'm looking to people, I'm looking at my grandparents who remained married faithfully right until their dying breath. And then I'm looking to people like you, right? A lot of us hop on social media to connect with others, and certainly I've seen a lot of your followers share that, gosh, like or I wish you were my mom, or I wish, you give such good advice, can you adopt me? And I've certainly felt that way. It's not just that, oh gosh, what Michelle writes is so wise and she's got all this experience. It's just, it comes from a place of love of God's plan for marriage, and love of, family and the way it's supposed to be, and the hard work that comes along with making that happen. And I certainly appreciate, I think, along with all of your followers, your willingness to be open and share, right, that internal look and perspective of your marriage. And so if you're just tuning in, we have the absolutely fabulous Michelle W. Lentz, author of Hey Beginner Wife, on the show today, talking about her brand new and fabulous book, Hey Beginner Wife. It's a beautiful book with a beautiful cover. That's your daughter-in-law on the cover in her wedding dress. Is that true?
Yeah, that was taken at her rehearsal dinner, and my daughter looked at that picture and said, "Mom, if we zoom into this might be a great cover for your book." And my daughter Mary is the one who influenced the cover. She saw that picture and said, "There's something here."
Yeah, it's great.
I'm real happy with that.
Yeah, good. Well, folks, if you are intrigued by some of the stuff that Michelle has shared, stay tuned. We're going to take a short break here in just a second, but we're going to talk all about this absolutely wonderful book that I've had the chance to read, and I hope many of you will consider purchasing. You can do so on Amazon, but also visit Michelle's website. If you're thinking, this book's kind of intriguing to me, but what's it really all about? What's the meat and potatoes of it? Michelle's launched a beautiful website that really dives a little more deeply into what's in the book and what you'll find in there, and you can find that at heybeginnerwife.com. Again, the book is Hey Beginner Wife on Amazon, and there's also links to the book on the website, which is heybeginnerwife.com. We'll be right back in just a few minutes with Michelle Lentz and her Instagram, which you can also find to dig into much more amazing content, is Hey Beginner Wife, all easy to remember. I'm your Monday, Thursday host here on the Quest, Sarasota. We will be right back to talk more with Michelle Lentz from Hey Beginner Wife. We'll be right back.
Thank you for listening to the Guadalupe Radio Network and being part of the family. As family, we have a duty to pray for each other, and we would be honored if you would let us pray with you and for you. You don't even have to tell us your name. Just go to our website, grnonline.com, or call our prayer request line and leave us a message at 800-395-4008. That's 800-395-4008. We will be praying for you every day.
Hey, Keith Downey here, host of Morning Joy, where truth matters. Advent starts this Sunday. It's the perfect time of the year to bring the church calendar into your home. And if you haven't done that kind of thing before, our next guest is perfect for you. Stephanie Aquila from His Girls Sunday makes it easy for you to live liturgically. Listen to Morning Joy weekdays starting at 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern, or subscribe to Morning Joy wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to The Quest, an extraordinary journey where every step brings us closer to discovering God's love for us. Want to join the conversation? Give us a call at 877-757-9424.
Hey y'all, welcome back. It's a great joy to be with all of you today. I'm so excited, been excited for a while to be with our guest, Michelle Lentz. She is the woman behind Hey Beginner Wife on Instagram. That website again is Hey Beginner Wife. She just published an absolutely amazing book called Hey Beginner Wife, where she shares heartfelt stories from her actual marriage, from her real life, that help beginner wives who are apparently just wives who want to keep learning how to be better and more loving and kind and respectful. So you don't have to have been married for 6 months or just a year to be a beginner wife. And I really can't emphasize enough with surely all of you have been inundated with Black Friday sales, and you could always get your daughter-in-law or your neighbor or your friend or your coworker that you're close to their favorite Sephora lipstick and something like that. It's thoughtful perfume, things like that. But really, truly, I think I'll be giving this book to my sisters-in-law and even to my mom. I mean, this book is really, really, it's it's gold. It's worth its weight in gold. That's not a good analogy because it's a light book, but I just can't tell you how beautiful it is, and to kind of not entice you all, but to kind of give you a more of a taste of what the book is about and what and how Michelle shares stories and gives advice. I'm gonna kind of bug her about a couple of her recent Instagram posts that I really, really, really loved, and so I think if you can listen to Michelle kind of expand on these stories and share a little bit more, I think you'll be able to get a better understanding of what to expect, along with the great explanations and, frequently asked questions she has on her website, heybeginnerwife.com. But Michelle, you posted maybe a week or so ago now. What would you think if you heard your husband say, "I just want my wife to respect me"? He said, "I think most women would have one of two responses. The first would be, 'What are you talking about? Our marriage isn't about you being superior to me.' And the second would be, 'Respect you for what? Is there something specific you've done that you think I don't appreciate?'" And without reading the whole post, it's like, I know do you remember that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? It's like,
Right.
it's like two different languages. And so do you find that women don't really understand or have never really been shown or taught that the language that men feel respected and loved by is being shown respect? Do you find that that's like a foreign concept to women? It was to me.
It was to me too. I definitely think so. I think it's very rare that a woman understands this. And I think if she does, she probably saw it modeled in her home. Um, this is something that I didn't discover until I was 13 or 14 years into my marriage. And
Oh,
it
wow.
blew me over because I thought I was very well versed in all things marriage. I mean, that's what I like to read about and listen to. And it was actually on a radio program that I heard an interview between two men talking about respect in a marriage and what that looked like and how important it was to them, and how women um, spoke disrespectfully without realizing it. And that's what surprised me. I thought, you know what? Here's the thing. We are defining respect differently.
Yeah.
And that really changed my attitude completely. I always thought that you had to earn respect. And so I thought, well, what has my husband done to earn my respect?
Right.
Nothing that was really above and beyond the call of duty,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I'm like, well, you're a basically good guy. You're doing what I expected you would do, and I'm doing what I expect me to do. So I'm going to reserve my respect for someone who ran into a burning building and saved a child.
Oh,
For the
goodness.
1% of us that do heroic things.
Right.
And then I, in listening to this interview, I discovered that men want their wives to respect them because of who they are. And I thought, that's not how I define respect.
Yeah.
It was, it made it a whole lot easier for me because what I realized that I was doing is I was treating him more like a little boy in the way that I would remind him to do things or correct the way he had done something else. And I thought, and I realized that made him feel disrespected because I heard this on this radio program, and I'm like, really? That makes him feel disrespected. I didn't know that. But then you think about it, I was treating him like an 11-year-old. Why would he not feel disrespected?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started asking myself, do I sound like his mother right now? Or do I sound like an equal peer who trusts him to get the job done without me helping? And that was my barometer of changing how I thought about respect. And I began to really think about it. And in fact, in my book, that chapter probably took the longest to write because I would write something and I would think your average woman's going to misunderstand what I just wrote because I misunderstood it for so many years. So I probably rewrote that chapter 5 times. I wanted to get it right because it changed my marriage when I finally understood it. And I think the best compliment I got was one of the gals who read my book. She said, that chapter is worth the price of your whole book, the one on honoring your husband and showing him respect. So I like to bring that up frequently on my Instagram because I think we need to hear it a couple times before we actually grasp it. And once we do, I think it's going to transform the relationship you have with your husband.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly made a huge difference in my marriage because, like you, and not, gosh, God bless you and your husband, 13, 14 years into your marriage, you're like, hey, wait a minute, I'm supposed to accept him as face value? That's respect. I just, yeah, but I also felt like you did. I just thought, here you are providing everything that we have. Here you are providing our home and our, everything that we eat, everything that we purchase. Like you're working so hard at your job to provide everything for us, and here I am thinking, yeah, if you come running out of a burning building, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to get respect from me. But until then, like, yes, I'm going to treat you like you're 11. Either because, yeah, you're not doing things the way I thought you should or whatever it is. And so I love that you said that's sort of an understood thing between men. They basically just kind of believe the best, and you say that all the time on your Instagram. And I don't have any tattoos. I'm not like a tattoo person, but if I did, I would tattoo on my forehead, "Believe the best" about your husband.
Oh, I love that, Sarah.
Oh
I
my
do.
goodness. I really do, because I want him to believe the best in me. I want him to give me the benefit of the doubt, and
Yeah.
and then I'm always thinking like, is he trying to, you always, especially I think when you first get married, especially as someone, I got married when I was older, I'm thinking, gosh, is he trying to hurt me, or is what's his intention behind this? And it's so silly. I know it sounds goofy, but the man only has one intention, and it's to make me happy. That's all he wants. That's his intention. And so I gotta give him the benefit of the doubt. And so, advice like this and so many other eye-opening, pieces of wisdom and these beautiful stories from her own marriage, Michelle shares in her new book, Hey Beginner Wife. And again, I just want to emphasize, you don't have to be a brand new wife to benefit from reading this book. She just shared herself that, over a dozen years into her own marriage, she wakes up and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing something that's disrespectful towards him. What do you mean?" And so, as we grow in marriage, and there's so many things to learn and uncover about each other, I just think that, yeah, that's one of the main issues I see, in my own marriage and in marriage, marriages in my family and amongst friends. It's just this kind of basic lack of understanding that men and women define respect differently. And so, yes, I think it's her book, and especially that chapter on respect is a great remedy to that miscommunication, to that issue. And then this, because it's very sweet, I'd like to share, because obviously, Michelle does a great job of really diving into all the topics, right? Like the intimacy in marriage, finances in marriage, and just all those really hard-hitting things that we all kind of are desperately like, I need help with this, that she does so lovingly in her book. But she also shares these really heartfelt stories and on her Instagram, which you can find on Hey Beginner Wife. Michelle, would you mind sharing the story? I think you said it was your daughter Mary that you found sleeping at the foot of your bed or
Oh,
near
yeah.
your bed. Would you share that story with us, please?
Yeah, that was so. At this point, we had 4 children, and Steve was working full time out of the house, probably out at 6:30 in the morning, and he didn't finish work until about 9 p.m. But because he was self-employed and he lived rather close to home, he made it a priority to come home for dinner. And we thought, well, we're going to have dinner together as a family. That is huge. And he'd be home for an hour and a half. We'd all sit down and have dinner together. He would play with the kids because they hadn't seen him all day. And then he'd kiss me goodbye and go back to work, and I would do bedtime, and we were good. Um, and one of the rules we always had was that the kids would sleep in their bedroom. I wanted there to be a moment where mom and dad had like some peace in our own room, and we wouldn't let them come and climb into our bed with us. Well, they could lay on the floor, if they didn't feel well or something, we'd put a little sleeping bag down there so they were close. Well, during this one season, Mary, who was probably 2.5 or 3, I woke up one morning and she was on the floor next to my side of the bed, hadn't woken me up, hadn't said anything. And I thought, okay, well, that's fine. The next night, the same thing. Well, 3 nights in a row, I finally that morning said, honey, why are you coming into our room and sleeping on the floor? And she didn't even think about it. She said, I like it when with a husband. Well, that sounds a little more thoughtful than a 3-year-old. It was, I like it when with a husband. And I thought, what? You're 3 years old and you called him my husband? I was floored at what she was telling me. And I thought, what is going on? And I really pondered it. I thought, Lord, what is she talking about? And it dawned on me that Mary didn't see Steve and I together as a couple, except when we were in bed, right? Sound asleep, mom and dad are right next to each other. But during the day, I'm parenting by myself. And at dinner time, dad is 100% focused on the children because we thought that was the best thing to do for them. So I told Steve and we talked about it and we said, the kids have to see that we love each other. They have to see that we are connected. And why would a little 5 or 4-year-old wonder about mommy and daddy's marriage? I don't think they would.
Yeah.
But Mary sensed that she wasn't getting what she wanted. So we made a decision that after dinner, and during Steve's precious hour at home, we would gather on the couch for 5 or 10 minutes. He'd put his arm around me and we told the kids, you guys are going to play. This is mommy and daddy's time to talk. And we had to train them not to climb in our laps. We had to train them to go play with your Legos right now. And sometimes we just talked about laughing about how uncomfortable the kids were watching us because they're not listening to our conversation. We're talking quietly, but we wanted them to see, we wanted to model a couple that loved each other. Yeah. And just that 5 to 10 minutes, it was probably 2 nights later, Mary stopped sleeping, coming in, and she never did again. Aww. Her little heart was so satisfied. And it sobered me to realize that my children need the confident assurance that mom and dad are okay. Yeah. They don't even have to hear what we say. They just need to see a hug or dancing in the kitchen or, an arm around me on the couch.
Yeah, I imagine the same way that it causes them distress when parents are yelling and fighting. It gives them great assurance and security when they see mom and dad loving each other and speaking to each other lovingly, spending time with one another. Folks, it's such a great, it's a great honor to have Michelle Lentz from Hey Beginner Wife on the show today. She's written an absolutely amazing book, which would make a fantastic Christmas present for anyone and everyone in your life, really. It doesn't have to be someone that just got married or someone that's only been married for a short amount of time, but Hey Beginner Wife on Amazon, absolutely wonderful book. If you want more information about the content of that book and some frequently asked questions answered, you can visit heybeginnerwife.com. That's heybeginnerwife.com. We'll be back after a very short break. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Hey Beginner Wife. As always, we thank you for tuning in. Hang on tight. We'll be right back after a short break.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. The appointment of Dr. Dave Weldon as director of the Centers for Disease Control may be a key Trump-Vance White House pro-life appointment. President Trump criticizes and wants a remedy for past CDC censorship and misinformation. And Dr. Weldon's leadership can quickly correct confusion over standards for maternal care. The medical community and the general public need to understand how abortion restrictions or even abortion bans nevertheless allow for thorough and life-saving care for pregnant women in any emergent situation. Getting a jump on government efficiency expert recommendations, U.S. House and Senate congressional leaders are already making the first steps to defund Planned Parenthood. So the abortion giant is now calling Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy Trump's fanboys. This is Life News Radio. A culture of life has a rarely mentioned but very formidable enemy. Pornography is material that deceives its consumers into thinking that they possess beauty, while the reality is they are possessed by a lie. The first step may be to talk openly with your pastor or confessor, reject the lie, and recognize that a culture of life relies upon you. EWTN News is reporting that Texas is offering new funding for districts in an optional K-5 Bible-infused curriculum. And its National Catholic Register has a must-read article on the case of Jimmy Lai, or Lai Ji-ying. The Catholic media mogul is facing possible life in prison. And LifeNews.com is offering a view of the new Volvo auto commercial you will want to see. It artfully and beautifully ties its auto safety to the value of unborn human life. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
You're listening to The Quest, a pilgrimage of faith. Have a question or something to share? Call the show live at 877-757-9424.
Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm with Michelle Lentz today, the woman behind my favorite Instagram account, Hey Beginner Wife, and I'm so excited to have her on because, well, if you're just tuning in, she just published her amazing book, Hey Beginner Wife. And you know, even if there's a young woman that you know that's not married but hopes to be someday, or you know of a woman who's having difficulty or feeling kind of, if there's any stress or like that feeling of I don't really know what to do, I'm kind of stuck. This book is really a wealth of advice and guidance, and it offers the opportunity to sort of reset or rebuild the foundation of your marriage on what matters, on what really matters, and helps sort of bridge the gap, I think, between some of those common miscommunications that are, gosh, they're so old, between men and women that have been going on for so long. And I think one of my favorite parts about Michelle's new website, heybeginnerwife.com, is she writes, "I'll let you in on a little secret. Other women don't have perfect husbands. They've simply learned how to enjoy the husbands they have." So Michelle, that being said, are you saying that I don't have to keep a running list of the things about my husband that I hope to change, but that I can change me and accept him for who he is and how he is today? Is that possible?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Wow.
I think comparison really comes back to bite us. I naturally compare myself to other people. And then I will naturally compare my husband to my girlfriend's husband. I write about that in my book of a couple times when I did that. And the realization that I was only hurting myself because I was missing all that he was doing by feeling sorry for myself for what he wasn't doing. And so much of that happens in our thought life. And we don't talk about it. People don't hear our thoughts. They don't know what we're thinking, and we don't challenge ourselves to clean up our thoughts. So like when you're talking about, can I let go of all the little things I want him to change? That list is going on in your head.
Yes.
And we need to take control of that list and say, you know what, rather than having a fix him list, I need to have an appreciation list of, gosh, he's crushing it. My husband is doing this well. And it's up to us to see him as our hero and rather than as our project.
Oh, if someone asks me about him, it's so easy for me to come up with that. I mean, that's kind of like, it's second nature for me not to ever speak badly about my husband to anyone under any circumstance. And so, if someone brings it up, I could go on and on and on about how great he is and all the things he does for our family. But yeah, I think you're right. We have to have custody over our thoughts, right? We have to be mindful and yeah, just because no one else is hearing it, hint, hint, Jesus is. Just because no one else is hearing it doesn't mean that it's good for us to sort of like foster, right? Or to keep those kinds of lists, or let's add this, let's chalk it up to the list and let's throw it on there. And what's some practical advice that you have for a woman who is maybe got a running list going on in her head that wants to enjoy the husband that she has, that wants to say like, you know what, he's crushing it? How do you go from this like growing list to saying, this guy is the jam. Like, he's my hero. He's got a cape on and standing like Superman. It seems like such a big jump.
Yeah. I think we have to practice. So my advice would be to practice. And some real good times to practice are driving in the car. You know, a lot of young wives don't have, they might have a child in the car with them or something like that. But if there's a time when they're by themselves, when they can talk to themselves in the shower and say, you know, my husband, he is just such a good guy. Like let's just take the basics. He gets up and goes to work every day. He gets ready for me every day. He cares if he is showered or not. He cares if he put on fresh clothes for me. He is out. He never says anything to his friends that are negative about. I mean, things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Those things we can start with just being thankful for. If we're really angry with him, we can start with the very basics of, because it could always be worse, right?
Yes.
It could always be, well, he chose not to come home tonight. You know, well, I'm
Yeah.
thankful he came home tonight.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that we, you know, whatever it is, I would say practice. And I encourage women to write down a list in their phone too, and just add things when they think of them, simple things, and pray and ask God, you know, how do you see him? What am I missing here? What are you proud of him for?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be surprised if you really think about it, how long that list can grow, and how quickly, how many things you have to be grateful for, like you said, that things that you just absolutely take for granted. I just was telling my husband earlier, who works from home, so we're like always together. I'm never really like, you know, completely parenting alone or anything like that. And I hope his work's not listening, but there's he picked up, our son ran into his office and slammed the door. He's 2. And my husband chased after him, and of course he just picks him up upside down and he's making him crack up. And I'm like, I say, you make him laugh, like gut laugh, like giggling, can't breathe laugh every single day. And it's the highlight of my day every single day. And I'm like the funniest person I know, but I don't speak like dad to little boy, toddler, you know, like language. And so, yeah, that's like, I mean, that in and of itself is a list for me that cancels out any other, you know, list of negative things that I have in mind. And, yeah, practice is, I think like you say very often, it takes work. There is no going from, you know, all this negative thoughts and comparison about your husband and other husbands, you know, to thinking he's a super, you know, like he's a superhero. It takes work, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes discipline, like anything worthwhile. And I want to share that I'll just bring up one more post. What I want to do is have a show where we just go through each one of your Instagram posts and unpack them, but we don't have time for that today. So I'll just bring up one more, and it really, really touched a tender part of my heart, because I was mentioning to you earlier, I grew up in a home where, if, you know, whether you were upset or, you know, angry, sad, whatever, you know, kind of negative emotion you were having, I say quotes around it because emotions are all kind of necessary, but whatever you said under duress or whatever you said when you were mad, it was, the expectation was that if you just kind of like, you know, went and slammed the door and went away for a while or left and came back, that it was all under the rug. Right. And everything was sort of like forgotten about. And then it went from, you know, escalated emotion and like door slamming and like maybe 30 minutes later to, hey, are you hungry? Yeah, let's go grab something to eat, you know? And so I didn't learn the importance of like repair and forgiveness. And you just had a post, we were talking about having practical ways to restore when offenses are made. And so can you share a little bit of, I'm sure you know which post I'm talking about, but it really touched my heart. And so I think I'd love it if you shared with our listeners what you meant.
Right. Well, I dedicate an entire chapter in my book. It's called Forgiveness Restores. As a society, we don't know how to apologize, and therefore we don't know how to forgive someone either, because we might just say, you know, when my kids were in high school, it became popular to say, my bad. And they would do something and go, oh, my bad. And that was it. That was the end of it. That was the apology. That was them recognizing that they did something, not apologizing, not taking any ownership over it. And so we decided to teach our children that there was more to saying I'm sorry than just sorry. Because, you know, when they're kids, they're like, well, he didn't mean it. Or you'd make them say, I'm sorry, and then they go, sorry. They don't want to say, I'm sorry. Well, what are we as adults doing? First of all, that's something to consider, especially when you're teaching something else. You kind of look inward. What are we doing? Yeah. And I realized that you say, I'm sorry, but you've got to say you're sorry for what? And so I'm sorry that I snapped at you lands in a completely different place and does more toward really showing that you're sad, that you hurt your husband. And then saying why you're sorry, because you were wrong. What were you wrong about? So I'm sorry I snapped at you. I was wrong to assume that you were late because you didn't care, whatever it might be. You're saying I was wrong to do that. And then, would you please forgive me? Now you've come to them and expressed remorse. You've told them that you know exactly what you did wrong. And you've asked them if they will forgive you and put it behind us. Is so much different than sorry. Okay, can we get dinner now? I think one of the most important things about sorry is in our heart, we think, but do you really know what you did? And that's what we want to know. We just want them to own it and to be humble enough to say, I don't know why. I'm just tired. I was a jerk. I was a jerk. I really am sorry. Would you forgive me? And a couple that's been working on that, we learn to really, truly forgive and not hold it against each other because we're both making mistakes at the same time. Yeah. Why would I be able to hold it against him and expect him not to hold it against me? Right. We've got to have grace for each other to know we're going to make a mistake because we're fallen people that make mistakes. Right. And we've got to give each other the grace to move on and try again. So yes, I want to teach our children that and model it. But as married couples, I want to encourage people to go at it from that threefold approach, to apologize, giving with all that context.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously not very meaningful at all to just, when growing up in a household where it was just expected that you were to forget it, and that's the apology, then you have to learn, right, how to properly apologize. And if I can do it as an adult, as hard-headed as I am, then quite literally anybody can do it. And so it's, not that it's easy, but I have found that your words are dead on. It hits, it lands 100% differently to say, I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the alternative is we stuff it down inside and become bitter.
Right. Yes.
And it grows and it grows. And then we end up one day being so angry at the other person that they look at us and go, where is this coming from? Yeah. All I did was drop a glass. But we have so much pent up anger if we don't deal with it in the moment. So it's really to our benefit to learn how to deal with this in the moment. It allows us to go deeper and more intimate. And that, like you said, that's part of the work of a relationship. That's hard. It's hard to say I'm sorry. It's humbling. Yes. I know. Between the two of us, I was definitely the most stubborn at saying I'm sorry. And Steve will tell you that. And he can tell you all day because he's right.
Well, you said, okay, this is my theory on that. I am also the more stubborn one in our marriage. And what I have come to find is that what you say often, I think Dr. Laura, the radio personality and author, shares often, is that like men are simple creatures and we are not. So
yes.
They don't they don't require much, and
they usually don't hold a grudge either.
I know.
Not like we do. I admire them so much. They let things go.
Yeah,
I hold on to it.
I do have to say that I before we segue into a break here, I just want to shout out to men in general because of their innate ability to just be like, it's all good. Like when they have beef between each other, they let it go so easily. And girls, I mean,
Yes.
I was my son's, kind of sort of babysitter-ish. We picked her up the other day, and I said, "How was your trip? How did it go? You saw your friends?" "Well, there's a lot of drama going on, and there's a grudge, and they're not talking to." These are like 13-year-old girls, and it's just this. And with guy friends, it's like, "Hey man, we cool?" Yeah. So shout out to men for their simple, tender-hearted, just giving each other the benefit of the doubt, simplicity. I'm here with Michelle Lentz from Hey Beginner Wife. You can visit her website, heybeginnerwife.com, to check out much more information about her fabulous book, practical tips and heartfelt advice to help you have a happy marriage at her website, heybeginnerwife.com. That book is called Hey Beginner Wife, which you can find on Amazon and pick up for every woman in your life who wants to be married or is married, knows someone who's married. We'll be back after a short break.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for November 25th. Today we celebrate St. Catherine of Alexandria. We may have few factual details about today's saint, but that hasn't stopped devotion to her, which emerged as a result of the Crusades hundreds of years after her death in the early 4th century. Legend has it that Catherine, of royal birth, converted to Christianity after receiving a vision of Mary. At age 18, she put her wisdom and remarkable debating skills to use before 50 pagan philosophers. In response, they immediately converted to Christianity, as did 200 soldiers and some members of the emperor's family. The emperor ordered that the converts be martyred. Catherine herself was sentenced to execution on a spiked wheel. When she touched the wheel, it shattered, so she was beheaded. Some centuries later, so the story goes, angels carried her body to a monastery at the foot of Mount Sinai. Catherine of Alexandria is one of the 14 Holy Helpers, a group of saints especially venerated in Germany and Hungary because they have proven to be helpers in difficult times. They were invoked as a group, especially during the Black Plague, which devastated Europe from 1346 to 1349. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
This is The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Share the show with a friend. You can find us on social media. Want to listen again? We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, the free Guadalupe Radio app, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts.
Hey y'all, welcome back. It's so fun. It's so great to have Michelle Lentz on the show today. She has written the book, Hey Beginner Wife, which I mentioned are practical tips and heartfelt advice to help you have a happy marriage. We've only got about 10 minutes left on the show today, so I can't bring up this 57,000 things that I decided I wanted to bring up today. But I do want to mention, so many of you who have been listening for a long time know that I do a lot of work with young people. And I gave a talk on church teaching about love being requiring about love in marriage needing to reflect love of God the Father for us, meaning it needs to be total, faithful, fruitful, and free, which many of you are familiar with. But I mentioned, do any of you think you're called to married life? And most of the kids raised their hand, as I expected, and we were asking a few questions kind of in a discussion, and it seemed that, despite the fact that they had to go to finish high school and that many of them were college bound and they had all these goals in life, it seemed to me that a lot of them thought, especially particularly the young women, that if they could get to the place where they could agree to get someone to agree to marry them, that all their problems would go away. Like it was this goal that they had, and man, when they got that dress and they got to the altar and they, exchanged vows in front of God and all their family and friends, that it was like everything would just get worked out. They would just have to be. And so, Michelle, you didn't find that when you said "I do," that all your problems got everything just solidified and was perfect from then on out?
No, I didn't find that. That is interesting. We bring ourselves into a marriage. We don't change. We have a beautiful day on our wedding day, and then we do life together. And the same habits, bad habits and good habits that we had before we were married, we bring into a marriage. You're right.
Yeah. And then now you're living with somebody and their bad habits and the ways that they fall short, and yours are getting to merge together, and then you get to work all that out. But I really am just so grateful for the work that you absolutely don't have to do. I mean, you could just be on a beach, right? But you're putting all this love and energy into writing this book, into maintaining this Instagram for people like me that are like, I need help, and so what do you have to there's so much amazing information on your website, which for those of you who really want to dig into what the book is all about and Michelle's story, you can visit heybeginnerwife.com. But Michelle, what do you want people to know about your book, and what do you hope that they will get out of it upon reading?
Well, I want them to know that I wrote the book to encourage them, because I think there's a lot of discouraged young women who don't know who to talk to, and they don't know where to go. And maybe they think they're the only one. And so I try to be very vulnerable in this book. And it's a very easy read because it's a lot of my story. It doesn't read like a textbook at all. And the other thing I wanted to do was to make the book accessible to anyone, regardless of her faith. I wanted you to have a book that you could read. And if you had a coworker who you just really wanted to get to know better, and you could tell maybe she was disappointed or discouraged, and you wanted to connect, to be able to say, hey, I'm reading this book. You want to read it with me? Maybe we could get together and talk about it. Each chapter ends with highlights that I covered in that book, in that chapter. And it really is designed to be reflective, but it's easy to share it with someone else. And I had in mind sharing it with a coworker that you might not have things in common. The person you're sitting next to in church, you might, and it would be fun for two women at church to get together and talk about the book. But it is truly a book that you can give to someone else who doesn't go to church, because I highlight the principles about what makes for a happy marriage. And what I did was I took all the scriptural references and all the faith-based reasons behind the principles, and I put them into the second book, which is the companion guide to this one. And so a lot of women will say, well, I want both. Well, then get both of them together and read the chapter, and then go to the companion guide and do the workbook that's associated with chapter 1. And in that workbook, I give the scripture references for why. Why are we cheerful? Why do we forgive? I mean, yes, it ends well for us what we do, but what does it say in the Bible about why? So the book goes deeper in that second companion guide, and you don't have to get it. If you're already a woman of faith, you're going to read my book and you're going to recognize that these are scriptural principles. But if you're the coworker sitting next to someone at work who doesn't know scriptural principles, you're just going to think, well, why didn't my mom teach me what's in this book? Right. And it gives a real talking point. So I tried to structure it in that way so it would be super practical for everybody. Like you said, it really is a gift that you can give to almost anybody because of that. I think most women are going to find themselves in this book.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of that, it's kind of the universal experiences of marriage, whether someone's a Christian or not. And that's why I totally agree with you that this book can be given to anyone. Not like the books I try to hand people with like giant crucifixes on the front of them, but this book really can be like welcomed by anyone who, like I said, is aspiring to be married or is in a marriage, and they maybe feel like they don't have someone to give them, right, this like meaningful advice and stories to share about their own lives. And so it's a really, really beautiful book. Again, you can find a link to purchase Michelle's book, Hey Beginner Wife, and the companion guide, like she mentioned, has all the scriptural references for the reasons why, right? She's going, giving advice about finances, about intimacy and forgiveness, so on and so forth. And it helps you to, it's like a practical application with exercises that you can kind of put these things into action, because sometimes we read things and we read advice and we're like, well, that sounds great, but how do I actually do it? And so the companion guide is extremely helpful for that. People like me who are like, but can you write like steps? Like, can you write steps down for me?
Walk me through it.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to share this with the women in my life. And I mean, it would make if it suited you, a good like Bible study, or like a book study, right, among women that are like-minded. And so everybody getting the book and the companion guide, it could prove to be very fruitful, right, in your circle of faith and in church and even amongst friends. And so there's so many book studies and things like that going around that this is certainly a great gift to say, hey, ladies, Merry Christmas. Let's all read this book and companion guide together. So let's give up the, everybody getting a Bath and Body Works set that I just threw into a cart, and let's give heartfelt gifts that are really meaningful. And like Michelle mentioned, she was very vulnerable in this book. There's nothing... there's no requirement of her to share these stories about her own marriage and the ways that she fell short and the mistakes that she has learned from herself. And there's no, like I said, there's no requirement, but I certainly, as a beginner wife myself, appreciate her willingness to share that advice with someone who didn't always have an example of that. And so, again, please follow Michelle on Hey Beginner Wife on Instagram, and then check out her website, heybeginnerwife.com. We're gonna I never have time to get through all the things I want to go. We only got a minute or so left. Michelle, you want to leave our listeners with any last words of wisdom?
You know what? I do want to point out that as much as my book is for anyone who's, next door to you or whatever, the last 2 chapters are very important to me. One is on how important it is to marry your match, marry someone with the same faith and values that you have. And that's a great conversation to have with somebody, whether or not they're a believer, because it's going to matter. You don't want to be unequally yoked and marry someone who doesn't believe how you believe. And I do bring that up. And the last chapter is make a commitment not to get divorced. I couldn't leave that out. And I do say at the beginning of the chapter, I would be inauthentic to who I am not to say that you've got to make a commitment not to get divorced. So please don't think it's just very light fare. It gets a little heavy, a little deep, gives you some good things to talk about, but I couldn't leave that out. And I just want to share that.
No, that's it's well received here on Guadalupe Radio Network. Make a commitment not to get divorced.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Michelle. I appreciate having you back on, and I'm looking forward to hearing back from our listeners that they've purchased a copy of Hey Beginner Wife for themselves, for their friends and family members, and how much it's helped them. You can check that out on her website, heybeginnerwife.com. As always, I'm Sarah Soto, your host on The Quest. Join us every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, and as always, God bless you, and thanks for listening.
Celebrating the culture of life. This is the Guadalupe Radio Network. Radio